My friends and I live in a quiet, upper-middle-class suburb, the kind of place with rows of big houses, perfectly trimmed hedges, and that eerie silence you start to appreciate once you've lived there long enough. It's not the kind of place where anything bad ever really happens. At least, that's what we used to think. This happened a few summers back, and no matter how hard I try to forget it, the memory refuses to fade. My friend Ryan and I were your typical restless teens. We'd stir up trouble more out of boredom than anything else. We lived just a few houses apart and hung out nearly every day after school. There wasn't much to do in our neighborhood, just trees, driveways, and fences, so we usually had to make our own fun. At the edge of town, up on a steep hill, there was this huge abandoned house. Everyone in our area knew it. It had been empty for years. The inside was gutted, every wall was tagged with graffiti, and it sat right next to a massive cemetery. Creepy, sure, but it was our go-to spot when we had nowhere else to be. One night, around 3 a.m., Ryan and I had just been ghosted by some girls we were supposed to meet. Frustrated and tipsy, we figured hurling rocks at the old house would help us blow off some steam. We walked the 20 minutes up the hill and found the place looking as ominous as ever, vines crawling up cracked brick, shattered windows glinting in the moonlight, the whole thing looking like it had been ripped straight out of a horror movie. Without a word, Ryan picked up a rock and launched it at the fourth-floor window. The glass exploded with a satisfying crash. I followed up with one of my own, breaking a second-story window. Then we noticed the attic, just one small, lonely window at the top of the house. Ryan dared me to hit it, but after 10 throws and 10 misses, I gave up. He smirked, picked up another rock, and nailed it on the first try. The window shattered into darkness. We were still standing there laughing when something dropped from the attic and hit the gravel in front of us with a loud thud. It was the same rock Ryan had just thrown. I recognized it because it had a weird Z-shaped scar on one side. It had been thrown back. Suddenly, we weren't laughing anymore. The only explanation we could come up with was that someone else was in there, maybe other kids messing with us. It actually hyped us up. We decided to sneak in and try to scare them before they could get the jump on us. We crept up to the front of the house, ducked under the tangled vines, and slipped through the half-broken door. The smell hit us immediately: rot, mildew, and wet wood. We made our way upstairs, floorboards groaning under every step. By the time we reached the attic stairwell, we realized we'd never actually been up there before. The roof entrance we always used was on the opposite side of the house. Ryan led the way, and I followed closely behind. The wooden door at the top of the stairs was warped and old. Ryan looked back at me. I nodded, and he threw it open. The smell was overwhelming. Something was rotting up there. We stepped inside. A white pentagram was painted on the floor, surrounded by melted candles and dried herbs. A small closet door in the corner was slightly ajar. The stench seemed to pour from there, but the room itself was empty. I'd had enough. I turned to leave, then froze. At the bottom of the stairs, 2 cloaked figures were staring straight up at us. I bolted back to Ryan just as we heard footsteps pounding the stairs behind us. We were being closed in. "Dude, come on!" Ryan yelled. I turned and saw him climbing through the broken attic window onto the roof. I followed him without thinking. As I swung my leg out the window, the attic door behind us burst open. We sprinted across the rooftop in total darkness, praying our feet landed where they were supposed to. One wrong step, and we were dead. The exit we knew, our usual way up, was a hatch that led to a ladder. Ryan reached it first. "It's locked," he shouted. Then from somewhere below us, a deep, inhuman voice shouted, "They went that way." It was the scariest thing I've ever heard. Without thinking, I stomped on the hatch with everything I had. It snapped open and I fell through, barely catching the ladder before I face-planted. Ryan followed right after, and we flew down the stairs, tore out the back door, and leapt over the cemetery fence like our lives depended on it, because they probably did. We crouched behind a headstone, gasping for breath, hearts racing. Ryan was laughing. I was almost in tears. Then we saw them. 4 or 5 cloaked figures emerged from the house, spreading out, searching, checking bushes, peering behind trees. We crawled deeper into the graveyard shadows until we were sure they couldn't see us, then hopped the rear fence and never looked back. We haven't been to that house since. I still don't know what we walked in on. A cult meeting? Some kind of ritual? Who knows? All I do know is that the next time a rock comes back through a window, I'm not sticking around to ask why. This happened back in 2014. I was living with 2 of my closest friends, Kyle and Mason, while we finished our last year of college. We were renting an apartment just outside the city. Between classes and work, we didn't have much downtime, but when we did, we always tried to make the most of it. Hiking, exploring random places, even just wandering through unfamiliar towns. We were always up for something new. One week, we all happened to have Friday and Saturday off. So naturally, we wanted to find something interesting to do Friday night. Mason mentioned this abandoned factory just past the city limits. He'd heard about it through a friend. It sounded sketchy, but also kind of cool. None of us had ever explored a place like that before. After going back and forth a bit, we finally said screw it and decided to check it out. We took Kyle's car and headed out toward the outskirts. We live in the Midwest, so once you get past the city, there's just nothing. Flat, open land for miles. That's where the factory was, off a mostly empty stretch of road. We didn't have an exact address, but we managed to find it on satellite view through Google Maps. We parked at a gas station a block away and walked the rest. The street was dead. No traffic. No people. Honestly, the whole area felt abandoned. When we saw the factory, we were shocked by how massive it was. Rusted metal scaffolding covered the sides. Layers of graffiti stretched up the walls, some in places I couldn't even imagine people reaching. There was a chain-link fence around the property, topped with barbed wire, but it had clearly been cut in several places. We slipped through one of the gaps and made our way to a metal side door that was already slightly open. The second we stepped inside, I got chills. The whole place groaned and creaked in the wind. The metal echoed with each gust like the building was alive. The only light we had were a few cheap flashlights Mason had brought. The first room we entered was huge. Rusted machinery everywhere, with tight paths between them. The 3 of us stayed together for a while, just exploring, checking things out. Eventually, I wandered a little farther ahead. At the end of the room was a hallway, and I glanced back before entering. I saw one of the guys trailing behind me, not sure if it was Kyle or Mason, but I figured they'd seen me go this way, so I pushed forward. At the end of the hallway was another heavy metal door. I stepped through and entered what looked like another old production room. It had a long, rusted conveyor belt and more machinery, but what stood out was a metal catwalk hanging along the ceiling. On the far side, I saw a ladder leading up to it. As I scanned the space, I heard the door behind me open and close. I assumed one of the guys had followed me in. "Yo, check this out," I said casually as I turned around, but no one was there. The door was closed. The room was empty. I blinked. Did I imagine it? I called out. "Kyle? Mason?" No answer. I opened the door again and pointed my flashlight down the hallway I came from. Nothing. Just the empty corridor and the echo of my own breathing. That's when I heard something shift behind me. I spun around fast, my flashlight catching a glimpse of someone maybe 6 or 7 feet away. It was a man. He looked completely deranged. Long, tangled hair, a filthy beard, and these wide, glazed-over eyes that didn't even blink. The second our eyes met, he charged. He sprinted at me like he was trying to take me down. I dove back through the door, slammed it shut, and took off running down the hallway. That's when I heard my friends yelling my name. They were nearby, calling out, trying to find me. I burst back into the first room, completely out of breath, and shouted at them to leave, now. We didn't waste a second. We ran. We climbed back through the fence and didn't stop until we were in the car with the doors locked. On the drive home, I told them everything, how the guy must have been hiding in the factory, waiting for someone to split from the group, waiting for the right moment. I don't know what his plan was, and I'm glad I never found out. We never went back there, and we've never done anything like that again. Some places you're not supposed to explore. This happened about 2 years ago when my friends and I were 16. We'd heard about an abandoned insane asylum out in Phoenix, Arizona. Naturally, being the curious and dumb teenagers we were, we thought it'd be a great idea to go check it out one Friday night. We rounded up a few more friends, there were about 10 of us total, and made the drive. The closer we got, the sketchier the neighborhoods became. By the time we pulled up to the asylum, the whole area felt completely dead. No people, no traffic, just empty streets. We parked nearby, found a hole in the fence and slipped through. The building was massive, run down, covered in graffiti, with shattered windows and debris everywhere. Honestly, it didn't feel too creepy at first, probably because we had such a big group. We figured, what's the worst that could happen? So we started exploring. Inside, everything was trashed. Broken furniture, old patient files scattered on the ground, doors falling off hinges. It was exactly what you'd expect from an abandoned mental institution. Eerie, yeah, but also kind of fascinating. That is, until things got weird. We had a flashlight pointed down the hallway since the power, obviously, hadn't worked in years. As we rounded a corner, the wall ahead of us lit up, not from our flashlight, but from someone else's. We turned the corner and ran into a group of 4 other teens. None of us expected to see anyone else, so it was awkward at first. Then one of them asked, "Have you guys been to the slide yet?" We told them no. We had no idea what they were talking about. They said we should come with them and check it out. Something about them just felt off. The way they were talking, the way they looked at us. It wasn't right. We declined, saying we were heading to the roof instead. That's when one of the guys stepped closer to me. He held up a knife and said, "Isn't this sick? Look what I found." He brought it a little too close to my face, and I tried to play it cool. I just said, "Yeah, man. That's a cool find," and slowly backed away, repeating that we were heading to the roof. They didn't press us. They just walked off, disappearing back around the corner. Once we got to the roof, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. Something about all of it felt wrong. I told everyone we should just leave. Thankfully, everyone agreed. There was one problem, though. There was usually a cop stationed at the front gate to keep people out. We knew we'd probably get caught on the way out. That's when one of my friends, Josh, spotted a fire escape ladder leading down from a higher part of the roof. He climbed up, then turned to help the rest of us up one by one. As I reached the top, something caught my eye, and my stomach dropped. "Josh," I whispered, "did you not see this when you got up here?" He turned to look, confused. Then he saw it too. Right there on the rooftop, about 15 cloaked figures were sitting in a circle. In the center was a small fire and a burning cat. Around it were the bodies of other dead animals. These people weren't just chanting, they were speaking in tongues. The sounds coming from them didn't even sound human. We didn't say a word. We just started climbing back down the ladder as fast as we could, but it was too late. They'd seen us. We heard their voices shift, then the rustling of fabric and shuffling feet. They stood up and started running straight at us. I screamed at everyone to forget the ladder, forget the cop, just run. We tore through the building, the sound of footsteps chasing us echoing through the halls. I have no idea how, but we made it out the front door, sprinted across the open field, and bolted toward the main gate. That's when the police cruiser at the gate flipped on its sirens and peeled out straight toward us. The officer saw the group behind us and cut them off, forcing them to scatter into the darkness. We didn't look back. We just ran for the car. That night was the scariest experience of my life. I still think about what could have happened. What if someone hadn't made it out? Would we have had to go back in and confront those people? And what were they even doing up there? I don't know, and I hope I never find out.